The monument to the 7th Indiana on Culp's Hill is not a secondary position monument. This is their regimental monument. And that's because the 7th Indiana, as part of Lysander Cutler's brigade, was guarding the wagon train for Wadsworth's division on July 1st, which would have been back at Marsh Creek or beyond Marsh Creek. And they arrived here at the end of the first day's battlefield, and their 400 men occupied the summit of Culp's Hill, along with the rest of Cutler's brigade on the evening of July 1st. And this unit, interestingly enough, on the monument says they were in 27 battles, including the Battle of Philippi in 1861, which of course is one of the first land battles of the war fought in West Virginia. But there's an interesting story with this unit on July 1st. According to Rufus Dawes of the 6th Wisconsin, whose marker we just visited, it is a troubled and dreamy sleep at best that comes to a soldier on the battlefield. About 1 o'clock at night, we had a great alarm. A man in the 7th Indiana Regiment, next on the right, cried so loudly in his sleep that he aroused all the troops in the vicinity. Springing up, half bewildered, I ordered my regiment to fall in, and a heavy fire of musketry broke out from all along the whole line of men. And we have some other accounts that confirm this nightmare in the 7th Indiana. According to the regimental history of the 7th Indiana, a comrade in Company K was seized by a violent attack of nightmare, followed by yells that would have made a wild Comanche ashamed of himself. And in 1913, in the Indianapolis News, there is an account of veterans from the 7th Indiana coming back to Gettysburg. And according to the account, as they climbed the hill, tottering a little now, they talked excitedly and argued many points relative to the incidents of the conflict. Here they had buried the dead in trenches and had piled them up like cordwood. There they had dug breastworks with bayonets and mess pans. It was all coming back now, and their old faces took on a grim look. It took old John Opal to break the spell of seriousness. "Do you recall the fellow that had the nightmares, Ben?" he asked McFarland. Like a flash, memory came back to Ben, and he laughed long and loud. "Do I remember him? Well, I guess I do," Ben said. "He got the whole camp up and in fighting order. He dreamed the Johnnies were after him and jumped up and shouting, 'Here they come, boys!' Then he fired his rifle, and the battle cry rose up and down the line. It took a long time to restore order." And one can only imagine what that must have been like. And the Iron Brigade and part of Cutler's Brigade fired volley after volley down the hill on the evening of July 1st into nothing. And it took a while to sort everything out. And finally, we get to the rarely visited monument on today's Monuments Monday. So we're talking about secondary position markers for the Iron Brigade. And along the northern slopes of Culp's Hill, we have a position marker for the 6th Wisconsin, for the 2nd Wisconsin, for the 7th Wisconsin, for the 24th Michigan. I should mention the 24th Michigan secondary position marker was placed here in the 1990s. And then the 19th Indiana is the only regiment of the Iron Brigade that doesn't have a secondary position marker here on this slope of Culp's Hill. I should mention that just behind the camera, looking towards Stevens Knoll and Cemetery Hill, it was much more open at the time, and we'll show this image so you can see across to, from the position we are at right now, looking across the entrenchments towards what we call Stevens Knoll. So you can get this idea of how open it was. But this is a monument that, you know, I've always been interested in it. I guess in the late 70s, when I really started hanging out on the battlefield and visiting some of these locations, I came across this. The first time I knew anything about it. And it says on it, Company F, 2nd Wisconsin Volunteers by L.D. Combs, 1883. And when I first became a licensed battlefield guide, my friends and I spent a lot of time at the National Archives, and I researched as much as I could about L.D. Combs. I found out his name is Lorenzo Combs. Company F of the 2nd Wisconsin was the Bell City Rifles from Racine, Wisconsin. Lorenzo Combs was born in Maine about 1835. He enlisted from Racine, and he survived this battle. He was promoted to corporal in September 1863 and sergeant in May of 1864. He lost his leg at the Battle of the Wilderness. After the war, he became a physician. For many years, lived in Colorado Springs, Colorado. He died in Ypsilanti, a town near Ann Arbor, Michigan, in 1909. And interestingly enough, I was able to find more about this monument in the Gettysburg newspaper, according to the Star and Sentinel, from July 11th, 1883. The interest in the Gettysburg battlefield increases as the years roll by, and the men who fought here are desirous of having the positions occupied by them suitably indicated. A number of memorial tablets have been put up, and others are in preparation. Last week, Dr. L.D. Combs of Colorado Springs, Colorado, visited Gettysburg to look at the ground over which his regiment did some hard fighting 20 years ago. The doctor at that time was a sergeant of Company F, 2nd Wisconsin Volunteer Regiment, which formed part of the celebrated Iron Brigade that saw hot work in the first day's fight west of the seminary. Dr. Combs tells us that the 2nd Wisconsin went into the fight 300 strong and came out with 36 officers and men. Company F came out with only 4 men. During the 2nd and 3rd of July, the remnants of the regiment were stationed on Culp's Hill with Wadsworth's division. The doctor subsequently lost a leg in the Wilderness. While in Gettysburg last week, he arranged with Mr. Pittenturf to put up a granite tablet to mark the position occupied by Company F on the 2nd and 3rd of July. And of course, Daniel Pittenturf was married to Solomon Power's daughter, who had died, and then Pittenturf remarried Shriver, if you visit the Shriver House Museum. And so Pittenturf, his granite yard and Solomon Powers are the same business, was on West High Street at the time of the battle. And here 20 years later, he's the one helping to put up this monument. And, you know, before I found this article, I had realized that this is made out of what is termed Gettysburg granite. So it's actually not granite, it's diabase. But that means that this stone is actually made from the same rock that is around the battlefield at the Pittenturf granite yard, they called it. So this is a local stone from here. Combs came here, he commissioned a local to make it and to put it up. and it's just one of the more interesting monuments around the battlefield. Now, you might ask yourself, why is it placed here? Why did he not have the monument placed on the first day's battlefield where this unit actually saw heavy fighting on July 1st, 1863? And of course, I'm going to say because the Gettysburg Battlefield Memorial Association owned this property at the time, and there was a road that led up here on the Culp Hill. We are close to town, and this is where all the visitors were coming. They were coming to Cemetery Hill, they were coming to Culp Hill. And, you know, if you went over top of Culp Hill, you could still see battle damage in the surviving trees that were there at the time. You could still see the remnants of the breastworks that were built by the soldiers during the battle. If it was placed out on the first day's battlefield, where this unit saw heavy fighting in that, you know, first day's fight, it would have had to been placed along the road that led to the Springs Hotel. And there were no monuments at all on the first day's battlefield at the time this monument was erected. So this is where early visitors were coming, and it seems like this is the location that it was, you know, suitably placed at that time. I should also mention that one thing I've noticed about monuments as you go around the battlefield, if you want your unit to be famous later on, you should make sure to put your monument next to a road, preferably where there is parking. So if you enjoyed the content we've been putting up on our Monuments Mondays, be sure to push the like and subscribe.